Hello everyone and welcome to the final installment on the apartments.com clone series. In this video, I'm going to teach you guys how you can put your servers onto a DigitalOcean virtual machine. The process is very similar if you want to use any other cloud provider, but today I'm going to be using DigitalOcean. So with that out of the way, let's get started. First thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and get a free domain. So the site that I'm going to use for that is called freenom.com. In this input box, I'm going to search for a new domain. So I'm going to search for apartments clone and check the availability. And then from here, we can search for different extensions. So apartmentsclone.tk looks like it's available, so I'm going to get that one, apartmentsclone.tk, and here we can see that it is selected, so I'm going to go to checkout. Here, let's go with 12 months, and let's just continue, and then enter in your email address. They're going to send you a verification link, so go to your email address. All right, and here we can see their email. So before completing your order, please confirm by pressing the following link. So I'm just going to press this, and now I'm taken to this review and checkout. And here you can just BS these credentials. So Alright, so from here, just go to Services, My Domains, and now go to Manage Domain. And from here, go to Management Tools, then Name Servers, and we're going to be using custom name servers. So leave this tab open and then go to DigitalOcean. And if you have an account, log in. Otherwise, you need to sign up for an account. And if you don't have an account, I'm actually going to put a link in the description. And if you click on that link and then sign up with it, you'll get $200 of free credit for the next 60 days. So I'm just going to log in. All right, so after signing up, you'll have your credit up here in the top right, and then you'll probably have something like this, the first project. So I already created my first project, so I'm going to create a new one. This is just going to be called Apartments. Tut. Purpose. This is going to be a service or API. Let's create the project. Move existing apps. We'll skip that for now. Alright, so now we're going to want to create a new droplet. Alright, so here we are going to just choose whichever data center we're closest to. And then the OS is going to be Ubuntu. Let's go ahead and choose the least costly option. And I'm going to go with the regular SSD. Here we could do $4 a month, but we've got the free credits, so let's use that. The authentication method that you're going to want to use is an SSH key. This is really easy. All you're going to have to do is just go into new key and follow these instructions. So pretty much you just go into your terminal or PowerShell. You do SSH-keygen. You'd enter in the file which you want to save the key, and it's going to default to this. Press enter, and then press enter again, and then it's going to give you the public key, and then you just place that public key into this input box, and there you go. You're all good. So with that done, you're going to want to just create the droplet. All right, so here we have this droplet, and here is the IP address for that. So I'm just going to click into this. I'll copy this, and we can go into our terminal or PowerShell if you're on Windows, do SSH, and then we're going to go root at the IP address. And are you sure you want to continue? Yes. And here I am now in this droplet that I just created. So for right now, I'm just going to leave this alone, and I'm going to go and point my domain to this new virtual machine. So let's go and look up the documentation for that. So DigitalOcean DNS. We just want to add these as the name servers in Freenom. So we'll do that one. NS2, and pretty sure this is NS3. And then we will just change over the name servers. All right, so now we have apartmentsclone.tk active, and the name servers are switched to DigitalOcean, so that's all good. Now we just need to go into DigitalOcean and create some of the DNS records. So I'm just going to move this documentation over to the right and have this open on the left. Add a domain here, and now that we're here, let's enter in our domain name and add in that domain. Now here we'll say @ and then we'll point that to our VM. We'll create that, and then we'll do a wildcard, and we'll point that to the VM as well. Create that, and that's all for IPv4. Next, we want to do IPv6. Now, okay, the droplet doesn't have an IPv6 address, so let's go enable that really quickly. All right, so with that restarted, let's enable this. And now let's go back into the project. Add a domain, apartmentsclone.tk, and go to quadruple A. And we'll do the same thing here. Create the record, and we'll do wildcard, and the same thing. Okay, so with these added, we need to go and turn this VM back on. So go back to the project and go into this, turn this on. On my other VM, the IPv6 address was already there. I didn't have to enable it, so that might just be an extra step. All right, now we can SSH back into our server. So let's just test it out with the IPv4 address. And there we see it works. So now we can test it out using the domain name. So we'll say SSH root at apartmentsclone.tk, and the authenticity can be established. Are you sure you want to continue connecting? Yes. And there we can see that apartmentsclone.tk is now hooked up to our virtual machine. So with that done, we need to install Docker onto our virtual machine. So I'm going to go to the Docker documentation. Here, I'm just going to follow the documentation that they have listed. Alright, now we just need to verify that Docker is in fact installed. And there we go. Hello from Docker. So Docker is now installed on the virtual machine, so we can clear that. And now we need to install Redis and Postgres. So I'm just going to look up the documentation for that as well. Alright, now we can say redis-cli, and there it is working. So Redis is now good to go. And I think it's just exit here. And now we just need to install Postgres. Alright, now I'm going to make sure that it's started. Alright, so now let's switch users to Postgres. And there we see that, so pSQL. So now that Postgres is installed, I'm actually just going to go to my local database on my local machine and download the contents of the database, and then I'm going to put it onto this server. And then I'm going to create the same credentials that I have locally as what I have there. Alright, so here we have apartments, apartment server, and we're using apartment server DB, or at least I was in my project. So here I'm going to go with backup. For this, I'm going to make the format tar, and here I'm just going to say apartment server DB backup. Alright, so now it's backed up and it's going to be in my home repository. So there we see it. So now I just need to open this in the terminal. So now in my local terminal, I'm going to say SCP apartments server DB backup, and then I'm going to point that to root at apartments clone.tk, and then here we need to specify the location we want to send that. So I'm going to send it to home in the home directory of this virtual machine, and I'm just going to press enter. And now if we go to the terminal on the VM and we do ls, we're not in the home, I guess, so let's go to home and ls, and there we see apartment server DB backup. So that worked. Now we just need to restore this backup in Postgres. So here I'm going to switch user to Postgres, and then I'm going to enter in this command, which will create the database apartment server DB. And then I will enter in this command, pg restore, to restore the apartment server DB database with the backup. Alright, so we're getting this error. The role apartments admin does not exist, so I'm going to need to create apartments admin before I can do this. So let's do that. And to do that, we're just going to use the create user command, and then enter in the password that you were using for your .env file in your server. Alright, with that user created, I'm now going to restore the database. We got something here. So pSQL, let's just list all of the databases. All right, so -c apartment server DB. Okay, so within apartment server DB, let's just select everything from users. And there we can see that we have some information of all of our users here. So let's quit out of there, select everything from properties. And same thing here. So we successfully restored our database onto our VM. Now we just need to Dockerize our chat server and our regular server. So for that, I'm going to open up VS Code and create a new file within this server. It's going to be called Docker file, and it's going to be in the root of the directory. And I'm also going to have another file in here called .docker ignore. And in here, I'm just going to have the access log. Now in the Docker file, we'll say from Golang 1.18. We'll make a directory for our application. We'll copy everything within our current directory into that directory, and then assign that directory as the working directory. We'll then build the server, and then we will run the server. Make sure that you have Docker installed on your local machine. And if you don't have an account already, go to Docker Hub and create an account. So to build this as a Docker image, we are going to run the docker build command, and then we're going to assign it a name tag. And for this, I'm going to preface it with my name that I use for Docker Hub, and then follow that with the name of the project. And then don't forget this dot at the end. And we will run this to build the image. So with this built, we can actually run it locally just to make sure that it works. So we'll say sudo docker run --net equals host. And we have to do this for the database to connect locally. And then we'll say Jeremy Persing /apartments clone server. And just change this or swap it out with whatever you called yours. And here we can see that everything is listening and working. So I'm just going to shut that off, and then I'm going to push that to my Docker Hub. So sudo docker push, and then the image name. Now let's do the same thing with our chat server. Create your Docker file in the root of the project, and also create the docker ignore file. And we're going to add in node modules, and we'll add in the npm debug log. In the Docker file, we'll say from node version 16. The working directory is going to be app. We're going to want to copy package wildcard.json to the root. Run npm install, copy everything over, and then run npm start. And now we just need to build this just like we did with the other one. So sudo docker build -t, your Docker Hub name followed by what you want to call it. And then followed by a period. so with that built, I'm going to push it to Docker Hub. So that is everything for the chat server and our regular server. Now we need to go into the VM and we need to do Docker pull and pull both of those images. So let's switch back to root over here. And here I'm just going to say Docker pull that chat server name. And I'm going to do the same thing for the regular server. So Docker pull, I'll just paste in what I have here and get rid of the word chat. All right, so let's run Docker images to make sure that we have those both, and we do. So now we can clear the screen. So now we need to install nginx, so we'll do sudo apt-get install nginx, sudo apt-get install ufw. And now we're just going to allow nginx http and nginx full. So ufw allow nginx http, ufw allow nginx full. All right, now go to the etc directory, ls cd into nginx, ls cd into conf.d. No. All right, so now we need to create a new file within this directory. So I'm going to use Vim for that and just name it the domain name that you picked. So apartments clone for me, followed by the extension, followed by conf. And here we'll say server, and then we need to give it a server name. And for this, it's going to be apartments clone.tk and www.apartmentsclone.tk and follow that by a semicolon. Now we'll say location root needs to proxy pass to localhost port 4000, and that's because our main server is going to be running on localhost port 4000. And follow that with a semicolon. And now location for dash root socket.io is going to be a proxy pass. So here we are going to add all this stuff. And then we'll close this out. Now we need to set up our SSL certificates. So go ahead and install python3-certbot-nginx. So sudo apt-get install python3 certbot-nginx. Then we need to allow port 80 and 83, or 443, my bad. And then here you can either do certbot-nginx or what I'm going to do, which is register unsafely without email. Let's see, do you agree? Agree to this. We're going to leave this blank. All right, so those are now certified. And if we actually go into the nginx file, we can see that. So vim apartments clone, and we can see all this stuff here. So Now let's go and create a cron job, which will update those SSL certificates every 3 months because that's when they expire. So for that, we'll just follow along with what they have here. And select an editor. I like Vim. So here I'll go into insert mode and I will add this in. Do :X to save as is, and then we can clear this. I'm going to CD, and before we start those Docker containers, we need to restart Nginx. So we can do that with nginx-s reload. So now let's run our main Docker image just to make sure that it works and everything's okay. So we'll say Docker run the chat server, or not the chat server, but the regular one. And okay, so failed to initialize database, got an error. Right, so it looks like I think I created the wrong user. So I'm going to create a new user with this name and the prior password. All right, so for this, I'm gonna have to switch to Postgres. All right, now let's give this a try. Now let's run the Docker image. So we'll do Docker run --net equals host. And there we can see that we are now running a Docker container. So if I go to apartments clone .tk, I should now get sent to not found. But if I hit an endpoint, which I set up, so API/location/search, and then we need to specify a location, so I'll say Miami, then we will get back information. And here we can see exactly what's being requested and the response status. So that is now working. So we can clear this and run it in the background. And we can do the same thing for the chat server. And now let's say Docker. Now we just have to go to our application code for the Expo app, apartments clone. So within our application code, go to your constants file, and we have to change out the server URL and the chat URL. So let's add those new URLs above the commented out ones, and this is what they are going to look like, except I need to change out ML with TK. And now I can start up my application and it should work. So I'm going to do this in the terminal here. All right, so here in my application, I can go to my messages and I see my messages, and this is all coming from the server that we just stood up, that new virtual machine. So if I want to go and add a property, I can do that. And we can just go back now, and then I can also view my properties. I can see which properties I have saved. I can see my contacted. I can search for properties. Let's just cancel that one and go here. can send messages. And I can also receive messages, like you'll see here. So with that demonstrated, that's going to sum up this video, and it's also going to sum up this series. So thank you very much for watching this video, and if you watched the series, thank you very much for watching that too.